Stampers, I'm Lorraine Sish from StampWithLorraine.com. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in the United States, and I'd like to share with you today a project that is often called a curtain fold or a drapery fold. The idea is that you're going to fold your designer series paper in a way that looks pleated, just like maybe drapery or curtains would look. And it's what's nice about the double-sided Stampin' Up! Paper is you get a nice little coordinating design or contrasting design on the back of your designer series paper. And so we're going to do several different designs of that using different papers, and I'm going to show you different ways to do that curtain fold. We're even going to do a double one, and I'm even going to show you some little projects that evolved out of the scraps that I had left over, or when I had a little goof I had to make a little change. So there are several ways that you can play with this, and I have at least 8 different cards to show you today based on that drapery or curtain fold. So I hope you enjoy it. After the video, please feel free to look at my blog, StampWithLorraine.com. Join me on Facebook, and I hope you stay in touch. And when you're on your blog, on my blog, you can sign up for my newsletter and get some weekly emails and see what's going on with Stampin' Up! And to see what's going on with my classes and my specials. So please stay in touch. Stay tuned to the very end. You'll see all the cards photoed at the end, and I hope you really enjoy this. We're starting with 10 by 4 3/4 of designer series paper, where the front is going to be our curtain, and the back is going to show a little bit. That's going to be sort of like the lining. So it's going to be sort of hanging this way. So if you have a definite up and down to your designer series paper, just be aware that it's going to, this will be the top and the bottom, all right, as opposed to the top and the bottom this way. Okay, so you might want to think of that as you're choosing your pattern. So 4 3/4 by 10. And we're going to actually cut this on a diagonal so that the curtain looks like it's sort of going up a little bit. You're going to measure 3/4 of an inch this way and then 3/4 of an inch over here. So I can do that easily. Okay, 3/4 right there, a little pencil mark, and then I'll erase that later. And I'm going to flip it 180 degrees and do the same thing on the other side. So it's actually an opposite corners of the paper. And then bring in your trimmer. And we're going to cut from that point up there to this point down here. I'm finding that little mark there and just lining that up with the groove of my paper trimmer. I'm going to hold it still. I'm going to move my scoring blade out of the way, and I'm going to slice it on that diagonal. All right. So if you have an upside to your pattern, then this is going to be like where your rod would be for your curtain or your drapery. All right, so if you flip this, that would be upside down perhaps, so choose the one that works for you, and you can use this on something else another time. Okay, so now we need to score. Now I can score with this, with my scoring blade on the trimmer, but for where I'm doing a lot of score lines, I prefer to bring in my scoreboard, line that up in the corner, and we're going to score across. Now, there's just a pattern here where we're going to score every 2 inches, then 1 inch, then 2 inch, then 1 inch, and just alternate. So starting at 2 inches, whether you're on your trimmer or a scoreboard, I'm going to do 2 inches. And then at the 3 inch, and then at 5, and at 6. So you're just alternating every 1 and then 2 inches. And then at 8, and then at 9. And you're left with that 1 inch at the end. Okay. Remember mountain folds and valley folds. Mountain means it's going to come up towards you. Valley means it's going to go down away from you. So we're going to start with a valley fold. And then the next one's going to be the mountain fold. So that you're going to see that little bit in between here, right? So now what I like to do is sometimes if it somehow did get a little askew as you're scoring, I like to make sure that this is nice and even at the top. Now's the time to kind of adjust it. If you need to move it up a little bit before you score that line down, then and press it down nice and firm, now's the time to do that. Okay, so then the next one will be the valley, and then the mountain, and just kind of accordion fold it all the way across. Okay, so now if you look, for some reason, maybe my paper slipped a little bit, I'm seeing right here that it's a little off, but what I can do is I can just kind of maneuver that up and then burnish it with my bone folder to readjust that crease a little bit. So we want to make sure that that's straight up on top. Okay, so that creates your pleat. Right, so when you open it, that's what it looks like. Just accordion, down, up, down, up, down, up. And you'll know if you went the wrong way if you don't see that reverse side right here. It would look more like this, right? And the idea is to kind of see that side. This could make for a nice card too, but you know, the idea is we want it to look like a drapery or that curtain, that pleat. Okay, that should measure just about 4 inches all the way across now. And like I said, burnish your crease lines. We're going to have a card base. I chose Evening Evergreen to match up with this, and Soft Succulent, and a piece of white. So the layer I have here is 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 this way by 4, and that is going to go fit across like that. All right, now if you wanted to, so I brought in this 4 by 4. If you wanted to, you could add another color down below to have a little bit different look. Something that coordinates with the DSP and is a little bit of a contrast to your card base. So that could look lovely as well. So either way, or you don't have to, you can just leave it plain. And I will do it both ways. Okay, so before we do that, put that on, we're going to stamp a sentiment up on top, because if I make a mistake, I can always flip it over, and if I make a mistake again, I'll just get another piece of paper. Okay, so let's take, let's do a thank you card. I'm going to take a sentiment from Peaceful Moments, and we'll just do thank you. And I think I'll get Evening Evergreen. So it's a nice dark color, nice dark image. And I'm going to stamp that up at the top right. Here we go. And then we're going to attach this here. So this is where, again, that silicone mat comes in handy. Going to flip it over, and we're going to put adhesive on the back here. If you have nice strong adhesive, Snail Plus is good. I am going to use my tear and tape so I can make sure it gets held down nicely. Okay, now there's some options here. If you want a nice straight flat look, feel free to put a little glue in between here and hold that down. I'm going to not do that right now because I wanted to attach pretty much just at the top, and I want this to kind of pop up a little bit. I want it to look like a curtain. Okay, I want it to look like it has some dimension. So again, if you, I'm going to take just a little bit of glue, and I'm going to just go down the sides here, the edges, so that it doesn't come away from my card. And if you want, maybe just a little bit in the middle here. Okay, it's up to you. Once you play around with it, you can see what look you like. Let me peel that off. And we'll put that on our card front. Okay, so now we're going to put a little strip across the top. You can take just a strip of cardstock. I decided to, in playing around with this, I came up with the idea where I used the scallop from Scallop Contours. It could just be a straight piece of cardstock or a ribbon, but I'm going to use the Scallop Contours. I thought this could look like a nice valance at the top of my curtain. So I took a strip and I cut that little stitched scalloped pattern out here, and I'm going to put that right on top there to cover this transition from the DSP, because it's kind of thick, onto the paper. All right, so you can decide how far up or down you want it covered, and then I'm going to glue that on. I'm going to stay on my silicone mat in case some of the glue oozes over, doesn't get my work area sticky. And that will help hold down the top of the curtain as well. Okay, I'm seeing this is sticking up a little bit, so I'm going to take a little bit of glue and glue that end down. And I'm going to trim off this here. I chose to go a little longer when I was using the scallop die, so I could have some options as to how I wanted it centered on the card. So I'll just flip this over. I have dedicated scissors that I cut sticky, gluey things with. And then every once in a while I actually clean them. But it doesn't get my regular good scissors all sticky. All right, so look how cute that looks with the little scallop on there. Then we mount that on our card base. And you can leave it at that, or you can add some embellishments. Okay, so see how this sticks up a little bit, so it gives it a little bit of dimension, right? So I like that. If you want just a more graphic look for whatever your paper is, you might look fine to actually glue those down. So it's all up to you. It's not going to add any extra or less bulk to it, whether you glue it down or not. So then I thought maybe putting a couple of these metallic pearls on there might be something that adds a little more interest, but not distracting from my paper. Like my Take Your Pick tool. These come in silver and gold. I used up the gold, so I have silver here. So maybe I'll just put a couple little dots, maybe on here, just for a little added interest. 3 is a good number. Okay, there we go, nice and easy. So I'm going to show you some other options with different paper and a couple different ways to orient your pleats. So the next one uses, oh, this paper, by the way, is from Pansy Petals, as is this, and it is not going to be in the new catalog. The designer series paper usually does not carry over. All right, I won't take up your time with this one because it's pretty much the same, but I will put it all together and show everybody at the end. All right, so that's going to go there. I'm going to take just a straight piece of the fresh freesia, and that will go across there. And then I will also tie a ribbon around, and you'll see what that looks like. So you would obviously do that on your layer before you glue it all down. Okay, or maybe I'll just stick the bow right there. That could look nice too, right? All right, so it just gives you another look, a different pattern, and so you can see what that all looks like. To show you what it looks like with a piece of paper, a 4x4 underneath, this is how you would do that. I've already stamped my sentiment on the top and glued that to my card base. There is a little smudge there, but that will be covered. So I took a 4x4 sheet of cardstock that coordinates with my paper and my other card base, and I just glued that onto there. We'll put that onto my card base. Cover up that smudge. Okay, again, I'm going to glue down just this little flap here. Don't want that hanging off. This will go across the top and help hold it down. Okay, and then this time I'm going to take some of the pansies and put them up on the top to fill in some of that space there. This is the Pansy Petal Designer Series paper and coordinates with the Pansy Patch, which is not retiring, and there are also the die cuts that coordinate with that as well. When I have a die cut set that specifically coordinates with a stamp set where I probably would not use this with anything else, then I keep it right in my stamp case. If it's something like the scalloped contours that has other dies that I would use at other times, like these frames and the scallop, I would use it without the contours and colors stamp set, then I keep it in a bin with just all my dies. So that's just my organizational way to do things. All right, so I took the outline for the pansies and die cut a couple of these pansies here. You can see it lines right up with those on the paper. Unfortunately, you will not be able to get the paper anymore, but you can stamp your images with the stamp set and then cut it out. Okay, so it has a small and a large flower. So that was just quick and easy where I cut those pansies out and I put some dimensionals on the back. Now because I want this to be here, I only put dimensionals at the top because this is already thick. So I'm going to just add glue here and then it will look like it's the same level. And this one I put some dimensionals on the back as well. One big one and a couple pieces of the edges. Don't throw those away. Cut them up and use them. Okay, and that's totally on the band at the top. Okay, so another idea, putting some kind of element there. I was playing around with some old designer series paper, and I was experimenting with different size folds. So this one is 1 inch, then a 1/2 inch, a 1 inch, then a 1/2 inch, instead of 2 inches in one and 2 inches in one. So as long as you alternate, you'll get that little bit of fold, and then the longer measurement will bring it over so that you can get the width that way. So just even using a piece of it, you don't have to do a lot, just a shorter piece created like a nice border to the card. Okay, wishing you the happiest of birthdays. Unfortunately, this one is retiring. I did love this one for the nice big sentiment because you don't really need all that much more, but it is retiring. But if you already have it or something like it, that's another idea too. I put a couple of rhinestone gems on there just to brighten it up a little bit. So another idea, just to use a skinny piece. Then I'm going to show you how to do a double. It's not going to go just in one direction, it's going to go in 2 directions. So for that, you will need, if you are crafting along, you will need a 5 by 10 piece of designer series paper. Okay, so that's what I have here. 5 by 10. I'm using new catalog designer series paper called Sun Prince. It has a lot of the blues, Night of Navy, Pacific Point, different shades of blues in there, and gray granite on the back. Okay, so starting with the 5 by 10, we're going to do the scoring first on this one. So we're not going to cut a diagonal because we want the whole thing this time. So we're going to cut diagonals later. So it's going to be tall in the middle and then taper down on the sides. Okay, so we're going to bring in your scoring tool, whether it's your board or your trimmer, and we're going to score. And we're going to alternate 1 inch and then a 1/2 inch, 1 inch, then a 1/2 inch, all the way across. Okay, so we're going to start at 1 inch and then 1 1/2. Then we're going to go 1 inch over to 2 1/2 and then 3. Then skip 1 inch, go to 4. And then 4 1/2, and then go 1 inch, 5 1/2, then a 1/2 inch to 6, 1 inch to 7, 7 1/2. Once you know the pattern, you don't have to memorize all these numbers. You can just say, okay, I'll go over 1 inch and then a 1/2 inch, inch, then a 1/2 inch. Okay, 8 1/2, and then 9, and you're left with 1 inch at the end. Okay, so you have a lot of scores there. You can see it better on this side. So now what we're going to do is we're actually going to cut an angle from the middle down on each side, and then from the other side, the same thing coming to there. So it's going to look kind of like a tailored tag punch, something along that shape. So we want to measure with a pencil. I'm doing this on the flip side. We're going to mark off the 4 1/2. This is where I love my grid paper. Should push this over for the camera. Okay, 4 1/2, which you already have a score line there, so that's handy, and 5 1/2. Okay, so just put a little mark there, and then the same thing on the other side, the 4 1/2 and the 5 1/2 mark. All right, then we're going to turn it 90 degrees, and we want to mark 2 inches and 3 inches, because that will leave 2 inches on either end of that, because this is 5, right? So you have 1 in the middle, you're going to have 2 on each side of that. And then, of course, the same thing on the other side. Mark the 2 inch spot, and then the 3 inch spot. Then we're going to make those angle cuts with our trimmer again. We will go from the mark on the right down to the first mark on the bottom. Line it up in your little track of your trimmer. And hold it nice and still. We're going to give it a nice swipe. So we'll be left with that. I'd say use that for something else, but it is already scored to do a pleat, so that might be tricky to use it. But you never know, I'll probably come up with something. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing on all 4 corners. We're just cutting off each corner. So the next tick mark there to this one here. Okay, then same thing on the other side. I have to confess, at one point I was rushing through this the other day and I cut from the wrong one over, so I had to start over, but I actually came up with something else to do with that, so it's okay. All right, so I made a wrong cut, so what I did was I just cut straight across on my one that I goofed on and came up with another card. So, okay, I'll show you that one in a little bit. All right, so we are going to start with a mountain fold this time on the left-hand side, and then the valley fold. However, I mean, you'll know you're in the right direction because you'll be able to see the reverse side right in there. Okay, so if you're not seeing it, if it looks kind of like this, then you know you folded it in the wrong direction. So I like to just start getting the folds going. So you want to get to that middle part, that middle part first, all right? And then you're going to do the same thing starting on the right-hand side. Start with that mountain fold, then the valley, and just alternate. Until you get to the middle. Okay, and you end up with something like this. So then these should pretty much meet up in the middle. And if they don't, now's the time you can kind of adjust it a little bit. Kind of rework the fold before you burnish it and make it nice and clean fold. And burnish those. You're going to get a really nice graphic look with this. Okay, now this one might be one that you might want to glue down. But it's up to you. Once it's together, you'll see maybe you want a little extra height here. But like I said, that's kind of all up to you. So then I'm going to mount that on some gray granite. And I have a white card base here. Oops, excuse me. All right, let me cut that. How did I want to do the reverse? Let me see. Yeah, I think I'll use a gray granite card base and then have a white layer. Okay, yeah, because that way the gray granite background here adds contrast to the white. Otherwise it might blend in a little too much. All right, so I'm going to glue that down onto my white layer. This one, like I said, I think I will add a little bit of glue in between the pleats to hold it down. Make sure you're only gluing on the short side. You don't want to put glue over here for it to show. So kind of like right in the crease is fine. And then press it down. Just to be sure, I'll bring in my mat. Okay, or a little whatever adhesive you like to use. Okay, the glue you have to hold for a second, right? Okay, so then that can go on there. And then that can go on your card base. And you can glue that down, and look at that. You have a really cool graphic look. I actually saw somebody at one point cut it from here and made it look like a Christmas tree. So that was kind of neat. Saw that on Pinterest someplace. That was a cool idea. So once you glue that onto your layer, you can put a ribbon around here. You can put a strip of alternating designer series paper or a cardstock or twine. I will finish this card layer, but you have the idea of what that is. And here's a finished one that I did with another one of my retiring favorite designer series papers. I love that with the hand penned. All right, and I tied in papaya ribbon, mint macaron, and alas hurrah to my favorite embossing folder, Tasteful Textile. Gonna miss that. The smallest circle die and the next largest circle die to create my label. And I think that turned out really pretty. So that one that I said I goofed when I was doing this, I actually just cut off the part that I goofed the cut on, and I was left with a straight edge, so I turned it into this. And so you don't have to have it all top and bottom. You can just have a straight thing like we did with this card, but it still can go both ways if you like. All right, so that's sort of along the same lines, but just going double, different directions. Okay, and then another piece that when I cut off the piece of here, I was left with something bigger than I wanted here, so I wanted to trim it down a little bit. So while it was pleated, I took my guillotine cutter and cut off, again, another inch, and I wasn't going to waste that, of course, so I actually kept it folded like this, pleated, and I glued it to a piece of cardstock. I thought it looked like a buckle or a little bow, right? A little ribbon or a ruffled ribbon. So don't throw your scraps away. Okay, reuse them, create them into something else. I tied a piece of my papaya ribbon that I had here. I didn't want a big bow because I didn't want to hide this, but I wanted something, a little something there. So I just took a strip of the ribbon and folded it back on itself. Kind of made a loop and then made another loop and then tied it in the middle with some baker's twine to make that little bow that is just enough to go on top of there and also mimics the pleats of that paper, right? So with that, I'm going to put several glue dots on here because that will really hold it on. And get in those crevices. So you never know where you can get some inspiration. I think it came out kind of cute. And then that one doesn't want to come off. I have to do it by hand. All right, so I'm going to glue that right in the middle there. Look how cute that is. So then putting it together with a card simply comes down to card base. Where's my opening? There we go. A card base, and then a background, designer paper. Going to make like a little belly band going across there and add a sentiment. And you've got a cute little card, right? So just using the scraps. So think out of the box and you'll be good. All right, so all those ideas, ladies, have fun. I'll finish up some of these other cards and show them to you at the end and show them on Facebook. So you'll be able to get some ideas and do some of your own, right? All right, so have fun with that.